At Cheating Story Lab, I found myself standing in my in-laws' living room amidst 37 people when my wife unexpectedly struck me. It wasn't a slap but a clenched fist to my jaw, and I could taste the metallic flavor of blood. The room fell silent except for the sound of someone's wine glass shattering against the hardwood. I remained steadfast, didn't retaliate, didn't utter a single word. Instead, I fixed Heather with my gaze for 3 seconds before exiting through the front door. Behind me, I heard her mother gasp and her father inquire, "Heather, what are you doing?" But I continued walking. I got into my car, drove away, and never returned. What her family didn't realize, what Heather herself was unaware of, was that my silence wasn't due to shock but a well-thought-out plan. In roughly 8 hours, everyone in that room would comprehend the reasons for my impassivity. My name is Trent. Heather had never been easy to please, always craving the limelight at family events, constantly assessing our value based on others' responses. Yet I cherished her. Our bond dated back to college, married for 7 years, no children as she preferred to solidify our footing first. I managed a property firm while she thrived in pharmaceutical sales. Our income comfortably surpassed $300,000 annually, granting us a lifestyle that resembled the ideal on holiday cards. However, the narrative began to disintegrate on a Tuesday in August. Arriving home early from a site inspection due to the contractor's illness and rescheduling, I stumbled upon Heather's open laptop in our office, still active as she was out running errands. I wasn't snooping. I merely sought the property insurance file when I chanced upon an open chat window on her screen. In a chat with my partner, Miles, his initial message read, "He thinks I'm working late, can you believe that?" So oblivious, he then asked, "Shall we meet at your place tonight?" After a moment of shock, I pondered for about 15 seconds before sitting down and scrolling through months of messages. They contained explicit details of meetings, hotel names, criticism towards me, my lack of drive, choosing to manage properties over developing them, finding me dull, comments on my performance in bed, comparisons between Miles and Trent. However, it was the recent exchanges that chilled me to the bone. "Heather, I've spoken with the lawyer. If we can prove he's abusive, I get the house, the business assets, possibly alimony. Miles, can you help?" "Heather, I don't need to show it happened. I just need evidence of my fear, medical records for anxiety, testimonies from family about his intimidation, perhaps bruises." I instigate Miles in front of the crowd, causing him to respond, allowing my father and brothers to witness. We subsequently record everything and submit the evidence before Christmas. The conversation, which I read 4 times, made me apprehensive. When I snapped pictures of the screen on my phone, the laptop moved to our bedroom and remained fixed on the ceiling for 3 hours until Heather returned home. Upon her arrival, I pretended to be watching television. She greeted me with a kiss and inquired about my day, to which I replied it was all right. That night, I couldn't sleep, lying next to a woman who intended to accuse me of domestic violence, tarnish my reputation, seize my business, and continue with my business partner. A woman I had loved for 12 years, I felt as if I was gazing at a stranger who bore Heather's visage. The following morning, I phoned my college roommate Dennis, who is a family law lawyer in an adjacent state. During my lunch break, I drove to his office and disclosed everything to him. He listened attentively without interrupting before leaning back in his chair. In essence, this situation presents a worst-case scenario. If she proceeds with her intentions, if her family supports her testimony, and if she has any tangible evidence of injury, you stand to lose everything, including a restraining order and asset freeze on your business. Furthermore, complications may arise in your partnership, and even if you manage to prove your innocence later, the damage will already have been done. So what should I do? Document every detail, avoid responding to any provocation, gather evidence of the affair as well as the conspiracy, and file first. Take control of the narrative. That day, I retained his services, followed by hiring a private investigator named Carla, a 50-something former police detective who showed no signs of being swayed by drama. Upon seeing the photographs of the laptop messages, she said, "You want proof of the affair." Requiring evidence of the conspiracy is challenging. Acquiring it is simpler. How can I obtain this? Present circumstances where they believe they're safe to discuss, install recording devices at these locations. Consider using your car or home office if they frequent those spots. Be aware of your state's recording laws first. Mine requires only one party's consent for recordings. After research, I found that I could record conversations I was part of but not those I wasn't present for, provided I had one party's consent. Carla clarified the practical implications. I needed to be cautious when collecting evidence. So, I got resourceful. I purchased voice-activated recording devices disguised as USB chargers and pens, placed one in my home office, another in my car's center console, and began carrying a phone with a recording app on me during conversations with Heather. For 3 weeks each night, I obtained the files and securely saved them in an encrypted cloud storage. The initial substantial part arrived 2 weeks later. After work, Heather encountered Miles in my office. I was allegedly attending a property showing at a distant location but had rescheduled it and parked nearby. The office equipment detected everything. Therefore, Miles, could you clarify it for me? Heather, with my entire family present, Thanksgiving is approaching. 30 to 40 people will attend. I've been organizing this event for weeks, complaining to my mother about Trent being short-tempered and stressed out because he has been curt with me. I'm concerned about his temper. She's prepared, and my sister Ivy understands my position. She is going through a divorce too. She realizes that men don't willingly relinquish assets. Miles, you need leverage, and you believe he will react this way. Heather, Ivy understands she's experiencing similar circumstances. She knows men aren't likely to give up their assets easily. Thus, you need leverage, Miles, and you think he will respond accordingly. Heather, I'll persistently provoke him until he loses control. Everyone has pride. I'll humiliate him in front of my father and brothers. If he responds with anger or attempts to leave, I'll prevent him either way, escalating the situation and causing a commotion. Someone will intervene, giving the impression they are protecting me. We'll record it on video, and that's the plan. Miles, if he doesn't react, Heather, then I'll strike him. When he instinctively pushes me back in response, that's enough, as over 30 witnesses will see him laying hands on me. After a long silence, Miles asked, "Are you really going to do this?" Heather chuckled. For months, I've been plotting this move. His business is valued at $2 million, our house is debt-free, and his retirement funds are substantial. I won't walk away from a dozen years without anything while he spends the rest of his life as a property manager. This is my exit plan. After hearing the recording thrice, I forwarded it to Dennis. His response arrived swiftly. "This alters everything. Continue accumulating evidence. Don't let her know. We're planning on undermining her." For 8 weeks, I became the epitome of a compliant spouse. I agreed to every request, smiled at every family gathering, attended her company parties, and chatted with Miles while subtly noting his words, all while playing the part of an oblivious, dull husband flawlessly. Meanwhile, Carla was working diligently. She verified the affair using photos, evidence from hotel parking lots, restaurant visits in different towns during weekend trips when it was claimed I was at industry conferences, and she was visiting her college friend. She presented credit card records that I had legal access to as a spouse, which showed hotel stays, meals, jewelry purchases never seen before. She questioned neighbors who noticed Miles's car in our driveway on days I was away from town. I assembled everything: emails, audio clips, photos, financial documents, a timeline revealing a pattern of deception spanning 18 months, and the scheme to implicate me as recorded in Heather's and Miles's voices. Dennis initiated divorce proceedings on the Monday preceding Thanksgiving, but we hadn't delivered the papers yet. He said you should attend that dinner. Portray yourself as the ideal calm and harmless husband, and when she executes her plan, do nothing, let her bring shame upon herself. And then, only then, we will serve her in the morning with all the evidence attached, and file for a restraining order against her due to her plot to commit domestic violence fraud. We have turned the tables completely. The night before Thanksgiving, I barely managed any sleep, constantly replaying different situations in my mind. What if I reacted impulsively? What if my self-control wavered? What if her strike before relatives awakened something within me, making me comply with her desires, yet afterward, those recordings resurfaced, her voice gleefully discussing manipulation and my demolition as a calculated business move. A chill settled in my chest, not fury, but clarity instead. She was no longer my wife. She had become an adversary, and I aimed to win at the Hastings family's Thanksgiving gathering. Heather's parents, Bernard and Gwen, resided in a spacious colonial home in the suburbs, annually hosting an extended family get-together involving 30 to 40 people. A lavish feast, football on TV, and children playing ensued, creating a boisterous and welcoming atmosphere where any unusual incident would stand out. I arrived with Heather carrying the pies she had insisted we bring. Upon sighting her parents, I offered a smile. I embraced her grandmother. I engaged in trivial conversation with her uncle regarding the market. Remaining composed and unobtrusive was my nature. Heather seemed anxious. Her restless glances towards me suggested anticipation, yet I provided no indication of change. The meal commenced at 4 o'clock. At a lengthy dinner table, Heather was on my left, her father presided at the head. The meal followed tradition with turkey and stuffing among other dishes. Amid overlapping chats, dishes were passed around. Someone's child accidentally spilled cranberry sauce, adding to the usual din. Halfway through the meal, Heather piped up, "Trent, could you pass the rolls?" I complied, but she quickly added, "Actually, they have too many carbs. You know I'm conscious of my weight." She spoke loud enough for all to hear, adding, "Unlike some people." A few eyes flickered towards us, yet I continued eating. "In 5 minutes, why are you so quiet, Trent? You're making everyone uncomfortable," I questioned. "Yes, you haven't said much. My family thinks you're rude," Gwen, her mother, intervened. "Heather, let him eat." But Heather persisted. "This is typical behavior. He sits quietly, doesn't engage, makes me do all the social work." I inquired if I was being quiet. She expressed her frustration. "I'd like you to be a more present husband, show some emotion, make an effort." She paused, her voice cracking. I'm sorry, everyone. It's just been tough lately. Trent's been distant." Her sister, Ivy, sympathized. "Heather's told me about this, Trent. She's really stressed." Nodding slowly, I apologized for not realizing. Heather escalated. "You never pay attention. You just coast through life managing your properties, content with mediocrity, dragging me down with you." I remained silent, simply looking at her. "Say something," she demanded, standing up. "Defend yourself, or are you too much of a coward?" She hit me, her fist connecting with my jaw, hard enough that my head turned slightly and I tasted blood from where my cheek met my teeth. The room fell silent. I didn't react, looking back at her for 3 seconds before standing up, leaving the chair scraping against the floor as every eye followed me to the door where I exited. A commotion arose behind me. I heard her father exclaim, "What on earth is wrong with Heather?" Her mother uttered, "Oh my God," Heather said. "He was going to, I had no choice, but by then I was in my car parked in the driveway for approximately 10 seconds before starting the engine and driving off. I didn't return home. Instead, I checked into a hotel, proceeded to my room and phoned Dennis. It's over." A pause followed. "Did you respond?" I had been struck with a closed fist in front of 37 witnesses. "Perfect. We'll deal with her first thing tomorrow morning." They asked if I was hurt. I felt my jaw, expecting a bruise and possibly swelling. I decided to visit an urgent care that night for documentation, photos, and a full medical report. The incident served as evidence of assault now, so I went. The on-duty doctor, upon seeing my injured jaw, inquired about the cause, to which I truthfully replied that my wife had hit me during an argument. He documented the injury, took photographs, and prescribed ice and ibuprofen. The report was added to my file, and I slept peacefully afterwards. For 3 hours that night, the following morning, a process server arrived at our residence at 8 a.m. on Black Friday, serving Heather divorce papers, an application for a restraining order, and a motion seeking exclusive use of the matrimonial home, accompanied by a USB drive labeled as evidence. By noon, Dennis messaged me. Her attorney had confirmed she'd seen the recordings, and she was open to negotiations. However, it wasn't about splitting assets equally if I abandoned the restraining order request. Instead, we were firm on taking the matter to court, seeking a judge to listen to those recordings. Pausing for thought, he inquired, "You're certain?" I confirmed my conviction. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks hence. In the interim, Heather was required to vacate the house as per the emergency order, moving in with her parents. According to mutual friends, the Thanksgiving dinner following that incident had been tumultuous, with Heather's father, Bernard, pressuring for an explanation of the situation. Heather attempted to clarify she was shielding herself from your mistreatment, but her mother contended that you had merely endured it passively. Her brother stated, "Heather, everyone saw you punch him in the face." Upon receiving the divorce papers with accompanying recordings, Bernard contacted you, Trent, saying, "It's Bernard. I need to know if what's on these recordings is authentic." It is. A prolonged silence followed, during which her voice and Miles confirmed she was plotting to frame you. Yes, again there was a pause. "I'm sorry, Jesus Christ, Trent, I'm terribly sorry, we weren't aware. She told us she made it seem like you were the issue, and I believed her. Yes, the Thanksgiving event was staged." He sighed deeply. "What do you require from me now?" "Nothing, just truth. If it becomes necessary for testimony, you will have it." 3 weeks later, I entered family court. Heather arrived accompanied by her lawyer, a woman around 50 years old who appeared polished, likely instructed to project sympathy. She wore modest makeup and conservative clothing, carrying tissues, which was anticipated by Dennis. As forewarned, she intended to portray the situation as a misunderstanding, two people in a turbulent marriage where emotions were heightened, resulting in a mistake. The lawyer planned to downplay the recordings, claiming they were misconstrued, and argue that the affair should not factor into asset distribution. The question was, what would we do? Play all the recordings, allowing the judge to hear her scheming fraudulent intentions before asking for everything. The hearing commenced. Heather's attorney opened with a depiction of a struggling marriage, asserting that the wife had erred but shouldn't lose it all. She admitted to the affair, positioning it as a result of marital deterioration, and labeling the Thanksgiving incident as an instance of poor judgment rather than recurrent abuse. Then it was our turn. Dennis stood up. Lawyer's argument. We aim to present proof that this incident wasn't impulsive, but a deliberately planned fraud and domestic violence case against my client. Played were the recordings where Heather and Miles discussed scheming for Thanksgiving setup, where Heather mocked manipulating her family, spoke about creating false injuries, and planning fabricated testimony. Upon hearing the recordings, Heather looked uneasy. Her lawyer stopped writing notes. When the recordings ended, the judge asked Heather, "Mrs. Hastings, do you deny these recordings are of your voice?" Whispers were exchanged between Heather and her attorney. Head nodding negatively, Heather answered, "No, Your Honor." The judge followed up. "Did you physically assault your husband at a family gathering in front of numerous witnesses?" Heather replied, "Yes, he was provoking me." Judge granted the restraining order, stating, "You are forbidden from contacting Mr. Hastings." Regarding the marital residence, Hastings has been granted exclusive use. For asset division, a full hearing will be scheduled, but I've noted that any evidence of conspiracy for fraud and domestic violence will factor into the fair distribution decision. The hearing is postponed. Heather's attorney attempted to speak, but the judge had concluded. Outside in the hallway, Dennis approached me. "That was as good as it gets. The restraining order ensures she can't bother you during the divorce. The fraud evidence suggests a favorable asset distribution outcome. She may opt for a settlement instead of trial." "What about Miles? What about him? He's my business partner. Is there a way to force him out?" Dennis nodded affirmatively. "Given the evidence of his involvement in a fraud scheme, yes, we can file a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. If he doesn't settle, you will win in court, forcing him to sell his share." 60 days post-divorce finalization, Heather received 30% of the joint assets, a smaller proportion due to fault factors. I retained the house, business, and retirement funds. Miles opted for an out-of-court settlement, selling his company share below its worth, as his lawyer suggested trials would lead to poorer outcomes. 6 months later, Heather attempted contact, sending a letter to my attorney's office. Dennis forwarded it to me with a note. "You don't have to read this." I chose to read it regardless. The 3-page document detailed her reasons for dissatisfaction and attempts to shift blame. She claimed I was emotionally distant, while Miles made her feel appreciated. Initially, my decision for the Thanksgiving arrangement was flawed, as I had driven her towards it through my controlling and disrespectful behavior, assuming she wouldn't leave and that I would act to preserve our marriage. Yet I was wrong. I didn't care about preserving the marriage. Instead, I cared about uncovering the truth. So I spent 3 months compiling evidence rather than reacting impulsively, choosing not to make a scene at dinner, thereby denying her the ammunition she sought. Her scheme crumbled that day as my silence and later her own recorded statements exposed everything. It's been a year, and I remain in our shared home, running the business, now fully mine, having ventured into development work, an area Heather had once considered me too lackadaisical for. I am currently single, not ready for new relationships, but I am coping well. Occasionally, people inquire about how I managed to remain composed that night, why I didn't retaliate when she struck me, or why I didn't assert myself before her family. The explanation is straightforward. I had already secured victory, not through some elaborate scheme or ingenious tactic, but by opting to wage battle with evidence rather than emotions. I chose to control factors within my control, such as my response, my readiness, and my self-restraint. Heather reckoned that I would follow her guidelines, become enraged, create a scene, fulfill her requirements. However, I declined to participate at all, and that silence, that refusal to respond, was the loudest message I could have sent. In essence, welcome to the cheating story lab. Sometimes the most effective revenge involves saying nothing at all.